You're listening to Little Green Cheese, episode 14. Well, welcome back. My name's Gavin Webber, and this podcast is where you can learn about cheese making at home. Well, it's been an exciting week this week, not necessarily on the cheese front, but on the green living front. And most of you would probably know that I'm a bit of a sustainable living, what's the word for it? I'm not going to say guru, sustainable living practitioner, I suppose. I was nominated for an award here in Australia, and it was the Green Lifestyle Magazine Award 2013, and I won the category that I was entered into. So I'm honoured to actually receive the award, and it was for Local Green Hero. If you want to learn more about that, you can pop over to www.greeningofgavin.com and have a look at the award. There's a lovely little acceptance speech video that I did. They asked me to do because I didn't fly up to Sydney because I didn't want to increase my greenhouse emissions and therefore my carbon budget. So that's just part of my value set. So anyway, on with the podcast. Today we've got a guest all the way from Maitland in New South Wales. We have Mark Brown. So here's the interview. Well, this week's guest on the Little Green Cheese podcast is Mark Brown. And Mark Brown lives on a farm, and it's called Purple Pear Farm. How are you, Mark?
Well, thanks, Gavin. Yes, good. It's been horrible weather in the Hungary, but I'm fine.
Fantastic. Where do you come from?
The farm is just outside of Maitland in the Hunter Valley, just north of Newcastle. We're on 14 acres here, Gavin, just very peri-urban and becoming closer to being a city farm than peri-urban at the moment. The town of Maitland is wrapping around us.
Oh, okay.
Very rapidly.
That's a bit of a shame. So was there like suburbs really close and they're just expanding out?
Well, I like to look at it, put a positive slant on it, and our customers for our food and that are moving closer to us.
That is a good way to do it. That's fantastic.
Yeah, we'll have 0 food miles shortly.
Okay. So you also have a blog, is that right?
Yes, my partner Kate runs the blog, most particularly. It's the Purple Pear Farm Permaculture in Action blog.
Okay, what I'll do is, I know what it is. What I'll do is I'll put that into the show notes so everybody can get there.
Right,
so there'll be no hassle at all. Okay, so let's start talking about cheese. So when did you first start making cheese, Mark?
When we moved to establish Purple Pear Farm here in 2006, one of the first things we did was to get a Jersey cow. And she came in calf and had the calf at around about Easter in 2006. And we very much enjoyed the manure from the cow and just the presence of the cow on the farm. And she produced quite prolifically with milk. We were milking only once a day and getting about 6 or 7 litres. And we needed to do something with that milk. And cheese was the obvious way of ensuring that we preserved that milk and made a valuable asset out of it. So I guess 2006 and an excess of milk was what prompted me to get into cheese making. Of course, it's gone way beyond that now.
I bet, yeah. So you said it's a city farm basically now that people come to visit. Yeah. So how many acres is the farm?
It's 14 acres. What's that in the new money? 5.6 hectares, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a small holding, but we primarily run a market garden with community-supported agriculture scheme, and that takes up, probably the market garden's about an acre, and the rest of it is under fruit and nut trees and olives and grapes, and there's about 10 acres that we rotate the dairy cows. There's usually two, and the pony that's used for Kate's birthday parties.
Oh, lovely.
So about 10 acres for grazing. And I mentioned that we did have two dairy cows. The idea was that we're milking one and the other one's resting, sort of thing.
Yeah, has that worked out?
Well, it's never worked for us, no. Getting the timing right on that has been, you get a phantom pregnancy and you're 9 months out of whack. So it never really did work, but unfortunately the young cow, Patsy, was the calf of Bella, our current cow, the young Patsy went down with 3-day sickness and didn't get up.
Oh, no.
She's left us now. Very, very sad, because one of the things in owning a house cow is it's more of a pet than a livestock.
Yeah, for sure.
You develop quite a relationship with them.
Yeah, I have the same thing with my chickens.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those sort of animals, the same sort of thing. They become part of the family, and especially when you're in contact, you're milking the cow every day. So you strike up a relationship with it. Yeah. So making cheese since 2006. So what sort of cheeses have you made?
Quite a range, but now we settle on one or two stock standard ones. Primarily, we make a Colby now, which is a washed curd cheese. And we found, I did some experimentation with cheddars and all sorts of weird cheeses, and by and large, they were too strong in taste for my partner Kate and for other people. Certainly when we had WWOOFers here, the European WWOOFers loved my cheeses, but by and large the Australians didn't.
Yeah.
So we found that the Colby was a good stock standard cheese that everyone could eat, and it went well on pizzas as well as grilled under the griller, and just generally sliced good for on sourdough bread and stuff. So we stuck primarily with the Colby. Apart from that, we make paneer, which is a non-cultured cheese, and we like to use that in a lot of our curries and things like that, a lot of our Indian type dishes. And sometimes I make a ricotta with the whey from the Colby. And we have spinach and ricotta parcels and that sort of thing.
Delicious.
So they're our primary stock standard basic cheeses these days.
So how many times a week would you make that?
Well, once a week, I suppose, usually. Sometimes I'll make, 2 or 3 cheeses in a day, and that'll be my day's work, getting them all done.
Yeah. So what would the average weight be of the unpressed the cheese after it's just been pressed?
Yeah, I think they run at about 1 kilo.
Oh, okay. Yep.
We're using 7 litres of milk in a cheese, and I think it comes out at a little bit under 1 kilo, probably 800 grams or something. Yeah. Usually. Very
similar to the ones that the recipes that I use that have between 7 and 8 litres of milk. Yeah.
Yeah, you probably started with Ricky Carroll too, did you?
I kind of did. There was a couple of books that I started off with. One was Ricky Carroll's book. The other one was Tim Smith's Artisan Cheese book was another one. And I also picked up a little, it was more of a pamphlet than anything else from the cheese making course I did from these lovely ladies that came to visit our community house, and that's kind of how I learnt how to make cheese.
Ah, that's lovely.
Yeah, and they were lovely old ducks, and they taught me how to make feta was the first one I ever made, and then
with goat?
Well, no, they use cow's milk, and we added lipase, so I gave it that tangy goat milk flavour type thing. So delicious. And then from there, I've just been making cheese since 2009, at home with whatever milk I can get my hands on. And we go from there. So
So would you do one a week, Gavin?
I'm doing about one a fortnight at the moment,
One a
and it might
fortnight, yeah.
range from soft cheeses like 30-minute mozzarella all the way up to Parmesan or Romano.
Yeah.
But I also make a wicked Colby as well. My wife loves it, so
Oh, okay.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I've
It's
only
a
just
pretty
made.
good cheese,
It
isn't it,
is. It's
really?
so easy. It's so the wash curd process is quite easy. Once you had done it once or twice,
Yeah.
certainly haven't had a problem with it.
No, I like the Gouda as a washed curd that goes into the salt bath too, you know.
Yeah.
That works pretty well for me, but I suppose to simplify things, we just stick with the Colby now.
Yeah. So do you sell those cheeses at the farm?
No.
So they're just for
They're
private.
all raw milk,
Yeah.
and so we don't sell them. We don't even give them away. We basically, it's our lunch here, you know.
Oh, fabulous.
And we run WWOOFers, WWOOFers, willing
Yeah.
workers.
Willing workers on
Uh,
organic farms.
and so a loaf of sourdough bread and a lump of Colby and some zucchini pickles sort of makes up our lunch most days, you know. Good old ploughman's lunch.
Yeah, delicious. So where do you make the cheese? Do you make it in the kitchen, or have you got a special area that you make it in?
A bit of both. I mean, we use fairly stock standard kitchen equipment and that, but a lot of our cheeses now we make because we run cheese making courses here on the farm as part of our Skills for Living Sustainably series.
Lovely.
And so so we do sourdough bread and preserving and cheeses and that sort of thing. So some of our cheese gets made as part of the course.
Yep.
And but some I just do in the kitchen too. We are in the process of putting in a commercial kitchen, and hopefully then we can actually get into value adding and doing something that we could sell to the public.
Yeah.
But we're not there.
So to actually sell, you would have to have a commercial kitchen, right?
Yeah, certainly for preserves and jams and those sorts of things, and
Yeah.
I guess for cheese as well, you would need to do them in a certified commercial kitchen.
For sure.
And put all the proper labelling on, the proper analysis and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And
there's a lot to go through, but I mean, once you go through it, it's probably worthwhile because value adding your farm produce is a pretty important part of a business plan.
Yeah, and you certainly make a lot more than you would just selling stuff at a normal farmer's market in your market garden stuff, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Cool. So, so what are some of your successes and challenges for cheese making? So, what do you?
Now, I suppose as far as successes go, I would say that I've never made a cheese that I couldn't eat.
Nice.
You might start out making a Colby and end up making a goodness knows what if you get the timing wrong or you overcook it or something like that.
Yeah.
But I've never actually mucked it up to a degree where I couldn't consume it. And I suppose that's in partly due to cleanliness.
Yes, exactly.
You're not getting a bad bacteria in there, but I think I would have to. I don't know whether it's success or luck, Gavin, but I do pride myself in the fact that I've never made a cheese I couldn't eat. And I suppose that covers failures as well. The challenges for me have been in the past just moderating the temperature during the curing process.
Yeah.
I started out, my cheese cave was a styrofoam box with a little dial thermometer sticking out the end of it,
Yeah.
and an ice bottle in there. And I went to a wine cooler fridge when I had quite a few cheeses on the go. The styrofoam box didn't work anymore, so I bought a little wine cooler fridge, and that works quite well.
Yeah.
And so the challenge, I guess, has alwaase been just to keep that, that 10 or 11 degrees during the curing time. Very important, I think, to make, especially for consistency.
Yeah, most definitely. So I've also got one of those wine cooler fridges that you can set down to about, I think the lowest it goes is about 10 or 11,
Yeah.
and I think it goes as high as maybe 18. Do you find in summer that that the temperature is so hard to keep below, say, 15?
Yeah, it can be. If your fridge is sited in a place where it can't get cooling, then it can be difficult, and I've been in there with a cup of water sort of sprinkling down the back to try and help it to refrigerate a bit better a couple of times. That is a bit of a challenge. I would dearly love to have a real cheese cave, something that was sort of 30 foot into the mountain or something. But yeah, if it's stuck into a room that gets fluctuating temperatures, then the actual temperatures can fluctuate a bit too.
Yeah, totally. I found that last year where I actually had to turn my cheese fridge off because I couldn't get it below 20 degrees.
Right.
So unfortunately, I had to put the cheeses that were still maturing into the warmest part of the normal fridge. And they took a bit longer, but that was okay. There were no failures, so there was no problems really. But
they'd just be a little bit milder, wouldn't they?
They were milder, yeah. So there was a Parmesan. So I actually had to age the Parmesan for about another 6 months. So once I got the cheese fridge back on, I put it back in and let it go for another 6 months. But with Parmesan, you got to wait forever for it. It's incredible.
Tell me, can you wait too long for a Parmesan? I've got some that is. It was really good eating, and then we didn't eat it, and it's rock hard, and you couldn't grate it for anything. Is that still good cheese?
Well, yeah. If you can't cut it and you can't grate it, then you probably can't eat it.
So I'll put it on a stone grinder or something.
That would work, I suppose. I got one of those in the fridge too. It's a bit rock hard, and we managed to grate it. I just use a hand grater against the side, and it makes a nice Parmesan powder, but that's about all it's good for. Good for some pasta dishes, but I like the Parmesan.
The Parmesan's a great way when you're making butter. You sort of skim the milk.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've got something that you can do with that skim milk besides pancakes and things.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, it is. You do need a nice skim milk for a Parmesan. But I find that I wax the Parmesan now. I don't leave it bare in the cheese cave.
Okay.
And it turns out moist, and it still has that Parmesan flavour after a year. In fact, the flavour is fantastic. And then if I say cut half of it for grating, then the other half I'll just vac pack and then put it in the normal fridge, and then it stays moist. And you don't get that rock hard Parmesan.
That's a good tip. Yeah.
So vacuum packing works for me when I with any wheel of cheese. If I've got a half left, I'll either re-wax it if I run out of vac packing plastic, or I'll just vac pack it and then put it in the normal fridge. Stops the maturing, and it tastes the same next time you go to eat it.
Yeah, cool.
That's fabulous. So what's your favourite cheese to make? Now, you said you make some regularly, but you must have a favourite one that's probably not one of those ones.
Well, I would say probably brie, just because it's, you've got to mess with the mould on the outside and keep your humidity up and sort of feed that. It sort of gives you an interesting cheese with the softness of it. But just, curing it with the humidity and that sort of thing, I'd say it'd probably have to be a brie, but I don't do them very much anymore.
Yeah, they are a bit of a challenge. It's the process is extremely similar to camembert, and it's one of the trickiest cheeses to make. If you haven't got that room to cure it, to mature it in that's perfect humidity, sometimes it's hit and miss.
Yeah, well, it's definitely hit and miss.
Yeah. So what's one of your favourite cheeses to eat then?
To eat?
Yeah.
Probably Blue Vein.
Lovely.
But I've never made one.
Ooh.
I'm not that bold.
They're an artwork, I tell you.
Yeah, but
They
I do like some blue vein with a cracker biscuit and a slice of pear.
yeah,
Very nice.
fantastic. Yeah, blue cheese is one of my favourites, but it's not difficult to make. You just need a little bit of patience,
Right.
I find, and it's easier than making a camembert, uh, but um, but it's harder to make than say a normal cheddar because
Right.
you've got to aerate you've got to put holes in it, you've got to grow the mold, and you've got to keep it at the right humidity as well and temperature. But not like I said, doesn't matter if the skin falls off because that's part of you got to scrape the skin off. That's part of
Yeah.
making the blue.
Yeah.
So, what's your favourite drink that goes with your favourite cheese?
uh, kefir milk.
Oh.
No, I'm messing with you.
I thought you were.
A very nice biodynamic Merlot.
Oh, lovely. Merlot is one of my favourite red wines.
Yeah, I would suggest that would probably suit me just down to the ground.
Very nice indeed.
I don't mind a more full bodied wine either. You know, I was very much into Cabernets and those things in the past, but we seem to drink Merlot now, and it works pretty well. We have in the Hunter Valley a very nice vigneron that grows his grapes biodynamically, and he makes some very nice wines. Of course, the Hunter Valley is well known for its Shiraz, and we do have some Shiraz occasionally. It's a sharper sort of wine, and it's kind of the Hunter Valley wine.
Mm.
But
you're so lucky.
I'd have to say Merlot.
You're so lucky to have a biodynamic producer close by.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I got to go miles and miles to get a decent wine from around here.
One
I like anyway.
Rutherglen would be your place, wouldn't it?
Look, there's the Yarra Valley is a lovely wine growing region. The Pyrenees, they grow wine, make wine there too.
The Pyrenees, that's in Europe.
No, we've got one here too. It's between Ballarat and Ararat.
Okay.
But there's some. Rutherglen is another area a little bit closer to the river, so the Murray. There's some lovely wine growing regions. Don't get me wrong. Even down the Mornington Peninsula, they make some wicked wines down there as well. Lovely Pinots because it's the right temperature. Yeah. And for me personally, I'd have to go 70 clicks to get a good wine.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah. Anyway,
we're very blessed. We've got a biodynamic miller that mills the flour. He's probably 20 or 30 kilometres away, but 6 kilometres away we've got an olive grower that we get our oil from. So we are very, very lucky where we are.
You're right in the middle of it there, that's for sure. That's fantastic. Sure. So finally, what words of encouragement would you give new cheesemakers that are just about to get started? What advice would you give them?
Well, just give it a go. The thing that I say all the time, Gavin, is cheese making, bread making, until you do it, you kind of think you have to do a university degree to do it. But then once you get doing it, you realise that the stuff that you have in your kitchen and the time that you have, you can do something that, as I said before, I've never made a cheese that I couldn't eat. So I've mucked a few up, but it hasn't been to the extent that I couldn't eat it. So I would suggest if you're thinking of doing it, do it. You don't have to have, a degree in cheese making to make cheese.
No, definitely.
I imagine that you could do a degree to make some artisan things, and that may lead on. But if you're starting out, just do it.
Just have a go.
And start with a farmhouse cheddar or something, and sort of build from that.
Fantastic. That's fantastic advice. Thank you very much, Mark. And now, Mark, you said you had a Facebook page. Do you know what the address is or the Facebook page name?
No, you just kind of got to search Purple Pear Farm, Gavin.
Oh, fantastic. What I'll do
if
that.
You put Purple Pear Farm into into any sort of a search engine, it should come up with some good results.
No problems. What I'll do the same thing. I'll find all the links and I'll put them into the show notes for all the listeners.
You're an amazing person.
Oh, thank you
More
very
power
much.
to you.
Thanks very much, mate. It's been lovely talking to you, mate.
Okay.
All right.
See you, Gavin.
Bye. It was great talking to Mark Brown at Purple Pear Farm. If you want to have a look at his website, you can pop over to www.purple, as in the colour purple, pear, as in the fruit, farm.com.au. So that's www.purplepearfarm.com.au. And you can also have a look at his wife Kate's blog. It's a really good read. I do frequent it quite often. So that's all we've got time for this week. There's the outro music. So upcoming workshop dates, recipes, and cheese making videos can be found at littlegreencheese.com. You can also find my ebook, Keep Calm and Make Cheese, the Beginner's Guide to Cheese Making at Home. And that's available in all ebook formats. You can find all my cheese making video tutorials also on the blog, or in the ebook, or on my YouTube channel. Just search for Greening of Gavin. Thanks for listening, curd nerds, and stay tuned for the next episode of the Little Green Cheese podcast. During this podcast, you heard royalty-free music by Kevin MacLeod. I played Malt Shop Bop and Call to the Dairy Cows.